We wouldn't be here without you. We had no other help growing for 40 years. I can't believe it. I'm so humbled. And without all of you giving me the support that you did, I wouldn't be here right now. I might not have the key to happiness. I don't have the happy button, but I feel pretty good with who I am right now. Thanks to you. Thank you very much.
Today we are ranking the albums of industrial legend Skinny Puppy, and we're starting with Remission in 1984. Originally a 6-song EP, but a year later extended to 11 tracks, making it a full-length. Smothered Hope is a catchy, if a bit unpolished single. Killer synth lines on Glass Houses, Incision, and Solvent oddly reminds me of Ghostbusters music at times, if anybody else knows what I mean. 80s synth pop influences only get more obvious on Far Too Frail and Sleeping Beast. It sounds like Devo, but fronted by a goblin, or ogre, I guess. The instrumental soundscapes of Film and Manhole feel like a preview of things to come, as does the eerie Icebreaker, a little sloppy and lacking some focus, but in a way that adds to its charm, and strong for just getting started. I'm putting this one at good tier. Just a quick note, we will not be including any Braps, back and forths, or any other compilations or B-side material, even though I have some of them on my shelf. But moving on, we have Bites in 1985. I realized I might as well showcase some of these discs since I've had them for so long, like since I was maybe 16, 17. So here's Remission, and here is Bites. This picks up largely where Remission left off, and I'll be judging this one based on the original track listing, as the 1993 release came so much later, nearly doubling the runtime and completely changing the flow, and that's what I'm holding right here. Another catchy opener in Assimilate, followed by another great synth line in Dead Lines. This one feels a bit more in line with the next few albums, as does Social Deception. More freeform sounding weirdness in Blood on the Wall and 80s dance energy on Last Call. Dig the overall atmosphere and greatly stepped up aggression of The Choke. I can hear how this one likely had an influence on Nine Inch Nails with those violent sounding synth parts. Icebreaker and Film also make a return. Tracks are all enjoyable, but often way too long, I would say. Step up from the EP in terms of consistency. If you cut down some of the track lengths and kind of focus this thing a bit more, I would put it even higher, but as of right now, I am going to put it at great tier. Then we have Mind, the Perpetual Intercourse in 1986. So shout out to this being from the year I was born. I did not include it on my video on best albums from that year, and I really should have. But this is where Skinny Puppy really starts finding their sound, if you ask me, moving away from the more synth poppy influences to something much more dark and eerie. This is likely in part to Bill Lieb exiting and hiring the late great Dwayne Godel, who was classically trained in piano in addition to having quite a bit of understanding of electronics. It's a very atmospheric album, leaning heavily into overall soundscapes and samples, but there are also some standouts here providing more memorable vocals, as with One Time, One Place, God's Gift Maggot, Stairs and Flowers featuring Wilhelm Schroeder of Frontline Assembly, and of course Dig It, which ended up actually being a proven strong influence on Trent Reznor. It also got a lot of airplay on MTV. I also love the synth work on Three Blind Mice. The cover art also landed it on Tipper Gore's PMRC list, even though it's very tame by today's standards, but I love this album. I'm going to put it at fantastic. Then we have Cleanse, Fold, and Manipulate in 1987. Lots of similarities to the last one in tone, though I do feel that the consistency of it maybe is a little bit different. Standouts here include First Aid, Deep Down Trauma Hounds, and my Trauma Hounds are coming in here right now, apparently. I'm also partial to Second Tooth with that infectious beat and kind of funky bass, and Tear or Beat never fails to get me bobbing my head. But then you have more eerie soundscape-focused tracks like Shadowcat, Draining Faces, and The Mourn. Admittedly, I'm not as fond of these tracks, especially back-to-back, but they definitely add to the overall sense of nightmarish dread of the full experience. Continuing down the rabbit hole into more chilling topics, just maybe a little bit more uneven than the last one, I would say, but I'm still going to put this one at amazing. Next up is VIVIsectVI in 1988. Now here's where things really take off for me with super tight songwriting and a runtime that really does carry me all the way through. Every song here is great, but I'm most partial to VX Gas Attack, Human Disease, Scum, and the excellent Texture played at the top here. This is also where they really start leaning into themes around animal cruelty and experimentation, even more so than some of the tracks that came before, thus the sample from The Plague Dogs.
I hope you make sure we're properly dead before you start, old Ripbeak.
Also dig Dog Shit and Hospital Waste, and the play on 666 in the album title is kind of fun. Great flow from track to track, the atmosphere is still consistently on point, but each song also stands on its own. It's just like much tighter than anything that came before, and it is my first that I am putting at perfection. Then we have Rabies in 1989. Al Jorgensen of Ministry is a big part of this record, performing quite a few of the main hooks on electric guitar, as well as providing some vocals. The end result is definitely a more guitar-driven record in the vein of Ministry, which some liked but others did not. This actually led to some tension between him and Kevin and Dwayne, with Key even saying years later that he felt like Al was trying to break them up. I couldn't find this quote again, but I recall also hearing that he did not like that his keys ended up being buried in the mix under the loudness of Al's guitars. I even had an alternate version with this adjusted, and I actually do prefer that one. All that said, I still love this record. So many incredible and memorable tracks like Rodent, Hexon Exon, Tin Omen, and especially Warlock, which is my all-time favorite from them, and also has a great music video giving the middle finger to censorship, as it's made up exclusively of gory horror scenes, especially from the likes of Dario Argento and Lucio Fulci. I'll play a clip here that really is one of the only clips I can probably get past the censorship here. Also love Two Time Grime and Fascist Jock Itch. I am also putting this one at perfection. Ooh, but then we have Too Dark Park in 1990. This album was recorded in my own old stomping grounds of Chicago, Illinois, and I feel like that atmosphere really seeps its way into the just overall sound of the record. To this day, it is one of the darkest records I've ever heard, which is why it was also named on my Halloween list of scariest albums of all time. The first time I pressed play on Convulsion, my teenage brain didn't even know what to make of it, but I knew I wanted more.
He's seeing monsters, he's losing his mind, and he feels it going.
Just chilling, eerie stuff, mixing hypnotic beats, horror movie samples, and lyrics centered around, again, environmentalism and protection of animals. Every single track on here is incredible, thanks in large part to Kevin and Dwayne's incredible earworm synth hooks, but personal favorites for me include Tormentors, Spasmolytic, Rash Reflection, Shoreline Poison, and Morpheus Laughing. Easily my favorite album from them overall. It is going to perfection. It's honestly one of my top 10 favorite albums of all time. Next up is Last Rites in 1992. Now this is always the most divisive album for me to talk about because it is a fan favorite, but of the 90s albums, it's easily my least favorite.
Move this man!
It largely returns to the more atmospheric and abstract energy of Mind, but really ramps up the experimentation and weirdness, especially in the second half with the likes of River's End, Lust Chance, Circumstance, Left Handshake, and the over 11-minute download. I prefer at least a little more structure, so the first half is more appealing to me in Love in Vain, Mirror Saw, and Killing Game, although I'm not much in love with those either. The one track I really enjoy is Inquisition, which feels almost like it was a leftover from Too Dark Park. Hate me if you want, but no matter how many times I try, I just don't find the same love for this as so many people seem to, even if I respect it. Share in the comments what you think I'm missing about this one, but I've been listening to it for decades at this point, and even in preparation for this video going back to it, I just still feel the same way. It's not going to the bottom, but it is going to great tier. Next up is The Process in 1996. The final album with Dwayne, as he sadly died of a heroin overdose towards the end of the recording process. As such, the album was never truly finished, and in spite of how much I hear fans speak poorly of this one, it remains one that I go back to the most. It was meant to be a concept album about a 60s cult, and I love the depressing atmosphere that comes with that. It's definitely a more polished album in terms of production, and songs feel a bit more radio-worthy, if you can say that. Personally, I have quite a few favorites here, from the more soft and haunting Cult, Candle, and Amnesia, to the chugging metal guitars of Death and Hard Set Head, which are among the heaviest songs they've ever written. I also love the dramatic intro of Jaya, which really helps to set the stage, and the rave-worthy Blue Surge and Mortar, too. Underrated if you ask me. I am putting this one at fantastic. Then we got The Greater Wrong of the Right in 2004. Just looking for something. Just looking for something. Now, as much as I was a little miffed at the increased ogre vibes of this one, especially in Nivek's vocal performance, I was just so hyped for this album to come out, and it ended up being one that I really loved. Mark Walk of Ogre steps in here in the absence of Dwayne, and he definitely brings a very different energy. L'Immortal makes for a very fun and infectious opener, and as much as you can call the breakdancing music video Protest a bit of a tonal departure, I love that track. It reminds me of something that The Prodigy would write. Itchy by scratch the itch. New World, Empty, and Past Present are also standouts, but this is another one I can really listen to from front to back. I am going to put this one at fantastic. Then we have Mythmaker in 2007. Emphasis here is on more grandiose sounding tracks that build to big crescendos like opener Magnificent as well as Haze. Petafly is a little bit more whimsical sounding and feels like it would be right at home on an early Ogre record. The echoey acoustic guitar of Jahir initially landed at a spot on my favorite list when it initially came out, but going back to it now, it just feels a little bit over-dramatic to me. Hearing some similarities to The Process, but I just don't find it to be as satisfying overall. It could use a little bit more bite to it. Like, Political and Ugly are arguably the heaviest things here, and I'm just not in love with those. That said, Ogre called it the best work he has done since Too Dark Park. I'm curious what others think about this one with a present day listen. Again, this was pretty high on my list. Back again when it came out, I can't remember what I ranked it the last time I did this, but I think it was definitely higher. Also, side note, Ogre also co-starred in Repo the Genetic Opera during this time.
I'll bark by your lungs, brother.
I'm gonna put this one at good tier. Then we got hanDover in 2011. I do not have a copy of this one, and it looks like it's pretty difficult to get at this point, but also, this was the first time I was truly disappointed by a Skinny Puppy album, and it remains my least favorite. Just so forgettable to the point that I often forget that it even exists, and that's after me actively trying to make it click with repeat listens when it came out, as well as various revisits again over the years, including leading up to this video. Very little really sticks out with me after over a decade, though I do tend to enjoy the mournful Ashes and dark and ominous Virusus and Village whenever I give it a spin. Boring repetitive opener in Overt. Wavy is sort of a mood but not especially notable. Ictums has some infectious energy but feels uninspired to me, and Colorblind is just okay. Often it just feels like a lower tier Ogre album to me, and so I am going to put it at okay. Before we get to the last album, just a reminder to hit the like button if you're enjoying the video, comment your own thoughts. These are just my opinions, it's all subjective, so feel free to share where do you agree, where do you disagree. And if you want to see more ranking videos, mostly of more metal groups, but I do have some other kind of industrial metal stuff on here. I have a Ministry ranking too. Be sure to hit the subscribe button. But that brings us to Weapon in 2013. This is the criminal age. This is the criminal age. Another album I wish I owned a physical copy of, but also it seems like it's out of print and people are charging exorbitant prices. Not the worst I've ever seen, but more than I want to pay. But anyways, after hanDover, this was a very exciting one, as not only does it step up the quality back up overall, in many ways it's a return to the retro sound of Bites and Remission, even including a new re-recorded version of Solvent. Killer opener and Worn In followed up strong by another dance club worthy track in Illicit. Salvo makes for a great single, just dripping with 80s synth and electronic beats. Paragon and Pseudonama are total bangers that always get me moving. Survivalisto is a bop. A little sad at the idea that this will be their final album, but it seems like an appropriately full circle note to go out on. And that is why I'm going to put Weapon at amazing. Y'all check out this playlist for more rankings of industrial and industrial metal bands, such as, again, Ministry, also Godflesh, or check out this video I made much earlier on in the channel that just kind of talks about my nostalgia for first discovering Skinny Puppy and my journey through them. Rip Skinny Puppy, but that'll do it for now. Flight of Icarus signing off. I will see you in the trenches.